Hi, everybody. This is Lee, and I'm talking about civil liberties once again. Last week, I talked about Rand Paul and how he messed with my head, whereas some of his economic stances, like, no, no. But on civil liberties, social issues, I'm like, yes, yes. And so I talked about some of the things that Rand Paul had been up to, certainly with our foreign policy in terms of foreign aid and military use of our military. This is not about Rand Paul, but it is about civil liberties, the civil asset forfeiture specifically that I had done earlier, like about June, where I mentioned that Attorney General Jeff Sessions had been trying to increase the civil asset forfeiture use of civil asset forfeiture by local law enforcement, whereby they can just take your things if they suspect that you're breaking the law, and that it was an offense to civil liberties, and that Donald Trump had not campaigned that way, that Jeff Sessions was opposite of everything that Donald Trump said that he was about, and that was the problem, and that Donald Trump would not have won his office as president if he had been truthful about what he intended in terms of civil asset forfeiture, the war on drugs, and then many other issues besides that. And that Jeff Sessions had been identified early by the Republican Party in the 1980s as being too much for the Republican Party, that his ideas were out there too much for the Republican Party, and so that he was denied a federal judgeship for that reason, and that Coretta Scott King told us about him. And the Republican Party at that time listened to Coretta Scott King. And that the Republican Party of today had drifted so far to the right, out in crazy land, that they tried to normalize Jeff Sessions and his ideas towards civil liberties, not only for people of color, but against everyone. And once again, there was an attempt to read what Coretta Scott King had said about him, but this time, today's Republican Party shut that down and basically shut her up, the reading of Coretta Scott King, and tried to dismiss that. And Jeff Sessions was able to ascend into the federal administration, not as a judge, but as Attorney General. And he came out strong saying, you know what? If we think you're breaking the law, we're just going to take your stuff. You don't even need to be charged. You don't have to have a trial. You don't have to be found guilty. And that if you are found innocent, well, you can try to get your stuff back, but unlikely. And so people said this is a problem. This is unacceptable. And then once again, the Republican Party had to say, okay, yeah, he's pretty much out there, like Coretta Scott King told us he was, like our older statesmen in the party told us he was. And so the United States House of Representatives last Tuesday approved the amendment to the Make America Secure and Prosperous Appropriations Act, and that will roll back Attorney General Jeff Sessions' expansion of civil asset forfeiture. His own people had to handle him. And so this was amendment number 126, and it was sponsored by a bipartisan group, and it was led by Representative Justin Amash, and he's a Republican from Michigan. He was joined by Democratic Representatives Ro Khanna of California, Washington State's Pramila Jayapal, and Hawaii's Tulsi Gabbard. So that's interesting. There was a faction of the Democratic Party that joined in on that effort. And so civil asset forfeiture is a practice in which law enforcement can just take assets from a person who is suspected of a crime, even without a charge, even without a conviction. They can take your stuff. And so Jeff Sessions said, yeah, we're going to do that. And we're going to call it the Equitable Sharing Program. and that allows the state and local police agencies to take your stuff and then give it to the federal government. And then the federal government will then give some back to the local police. So, the local police would take your stuff, break off the feds, and then the feds would break off the local police. And they call that equitable sharing. Other people call it getting jacked, but, when it's, we just go along with what they call it. And so it was a way to skirt past state law. And that this amendment that passed in the House, it would roll Jeff Sessions' attempt to revive that program back to the Obama era status. And so let's see. Oh, okay. Virginia Democratic Representative Don Bayer also voiced support for the effort. And he said that civil asset forfeiture without limits presents one of the strongest threats to our civil property and constitutional rights. And it creates a perverse incentive to seek profits over justice. And so the amendment passed with a voice vote, and that there was overwhelming support, and that also Republican Representatives Mark Sanford of South Carolina, Raul Labrador of Idaho, and Dana Rohrabacher of California also joined in that effort, along with Democrat Earl Blumenauer of Oregon. And so, once again, it's Jeff Sessions' own people have to handle him. That's how far out he is. That his own party had to you know what, you're at 1,000, maybe take it down to 500, or you know what, how about 250? And so it's crazy that he was allowed to actually be nominated and then voted into office, and then now he's being handled, fortunately. But the fact that he was able to make it through this far to where he had this ability to put the hurt on an entire nation, that's the scary part. But at least it's being handled, and it's probably not the only thing that needs to be handled. And that Republican Party, you need to handle your stuff. You need to clean your house. You need to sweep your own doorstep and handle your people and get them off our backs. Good luck.